Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems and welcome back to MXGP 2019, where today we're playing the 2019 version of Mantova and talking about the 2020 MXGP of Lombardia, which just happened on Sunday at Mantova, which is why I'm playing the track. First of the triple headers that will be happening at Mantova. There's going to be a race pretty much tomorrow because you're going to watch this video. It's coming out on Tuesday. And then there will be another race on Sunday. So just like the triple header at Faenza and the soon-to-be triple header at Lommel, that is the format that these guys are going with. And we got a lot of racing to talk about and some things that have changed up on the season. Before I get too deep into this video and before I start talking about the race itself, I just want to send my thoughts to Arminas Jasikonis, who is unfortunately, in a sense, fighting for his life at the moment. For those of you that don't know, maybe you don't follow the GP scene that much, Jasikonis, who had a pretty good first moto, he finished, I think, 6th or 7th inside of the top 10, and a guy that usually battles pretty well on sand tracks, was one of the fastest riders on the track in the second moto, and he was in 6th. And there's a really crazy battle at the front of the pack. 5 riders all in a bit of a freight train. Jasikonis was in 6th behind them and catching them. And with about 11 minutes to go in the second moto, he sustained a very, very heavy crash. And I'll explain where he crashed when I get to it. But went over the bars, hit the ground very hard, and is... So what happened is he fell, was knocked completely unconscious. They got him off the track very quickly. Moved him to, I believe, an ambulance, took him to a local hospital, and was deemed that that wasn't enough, so they very quickly life-flighted him to a hospital in Cremona, which is about, it looks like roughly an hour away driving-wise in Italy from Mantova, so probably a fairly quick flight to get there, and almost immediately put him in a medically induced coma. He crashed right here on the backside of this tabletop down into this next roller. He kind of scrubbed, went flying over the top of the bars, and when he landed, he rode the nose for a long time, similar to maybe those of you in the States that remember this. Jet Lawrence going over the bars at the end of the whoops in Supercross, rode the nose and pile drove, unfortunately, the next uphill, which is now a double. It's a single in this game, but it was a double this past week. And he has suffered a traumatic brain injury, and because of that, they put him in a medically induced coma. That is all we know at this time. We don't know the specifics of the brain injury. We don't know how long he's been out or the, anything more than that. All we know is what the team has updated us with so far, which is Antti Pyörinen over the Ice One Husqvarna team putting out a press release saying that, this is a very severe injury that he's dealing with, and his thoughts go to the family of Arminas Jasikonis. My thoughts are with them as well in this time, and really hoping that within the next day or two we hear some good news about any swelling or bleeding that may be happening in his brain has gone down. The damage is limited. He's able to wake up and be okay, but obviously very jarring and not good at all. And like I said, this is a situation where more or less he's fighting for his life, so please keep Arminas Jasikonis in your thoughts, and really hope he's able to pull through and get better. And even if he never returns to racing, I just hope that he's able to have a life to still live beyond this, because it's never a good sign to see the way that this is all transpired. So somber note to start the video with, but I felt like a lot of people would have wanted to talk about it on some level because it's probably the biggest news story in the motocross world right now, to be honest with you. It should be if it isn't already, because this is a huge deal and deserves a lot of weight and severity talk to that specific scenario. So hoping for Jasikonis to pull through, and like I said, just keep him in your thoughts. But let's move on to talking about this 2020 MXGP season, which has been blown completely wide open. If you were with me in my last review, which was at the MXGP of Città di Faenza, messing up my Italian here a little bit. Jeffrey Hurlings had gone down, and how about that? In the span of like 15 days, we've had 2 very, very serious crashes happen in MXGP. And what's weird is that they happened in spaces that you just wouldn't expect it to happen. Like Evgeny Barbashev had a huge crash over the weekend on this big tabletop that I'm coming up to here. He got a little swapped on the face of this upcoming jump and couldn't get it stopped in time, so he just launched off of this way out to flat and fell. Very like Henry Hill-esque kind of crash at Bud's Creek, and he walked away fine from that. He has a little bit of pain in his chest because he smashed his chest on the bars, but he walks away fine from that. But a small over the bars kind of weird endo thing has Jasakonis in a coma, and Jeffrey Hurlings had this weird swap that sent him end over end at Faenza, and Jeffrey had a very detailed recount of that situation on his Instagram, posted a couple days ago. Well, it's probably about a week ago now that he did, where he basically says for like 30 minutes he didn't have feeling from like the chest down, so he thought he was paralyzed, and fortunately it eventually came back, and obviously there were some fractures in his neck that he's dealing with and trying to see whether or not he can even make it back to racing this season, which if I were him, I would fully understand if he doesn't race at all for the rest of the year. But he was the championship leader at the time, and having gone out, it opened up the door of opportunity for this plethora of riders behind him to really make things interesting. First up, Antonio Cairoli takes over the championship lead, not by winning, but by being consistent, which is starting to be Cairoli's MO. As he gets older and older, he's now 35 years old. He's not the same Cairoli that he once was. He's not going to go win every moto, but he was very consistent up until this round at Faenza, or at Mantova, I should say. And his GPs at Faenza helped him get the points lead away from Hurlings, but obviously, open up a little bit of a gap on Geyser and some of the other guys that he's also in the midst of a fight with for this championship now. So Cairoli enters here as the points leader at Mantova, but he does not leave the MXGP of Lombardia as the points leader. No, Tim Geyser is able to grab that. Geyser had a very rough and interesting first moto at Mantova where he just got a bad start, basically. I think he even said that he didn't crash. He just kind of got together with his teammate early on, and it put him way back and had to charge his way forward. But interestingly enough, like, it just wasn't a solid charge. Like, it was a pretty good race. He got up to 8th, but he was kind of stuck in like the 10, 11, 12 group for quite a long time. And I think that's just kind of the story of this season, right? Is that there's so many different guys that can challenge for race wins because there are so many GP winners and world championship contenders on the gate in the MXGP class. So Geyser, a multi-time world champion, can't dive through the field and get his way all the way up to 3rd or whatever to salvage a lot of points. He gets stuck in 10, 11, 12 and ends up 8th in a moto. It's just the nature of the business this year, which is just I guess in some sense kind of cool to see because it's making the championship fights really, really close. But anyway, Geyser 8th in the first moto. Second moto, he's able to get a decent start this time. I think he's 5th or 6th. Charged forward, made a good pass on Roman Fever to get in a second, and then about a half a lap later passed Jorge Prado to take the lead, and he pretty much never looked back. So I think he unofficially ended up 3rd or 2nd overall on the day, and retains the red plate now, gets the red plate back away from Cairoli, who finished 3rd in the first moto, but in the second moto crashed. He actually had a pretty bad start. He was well down the field and then crashed and broke his nose and had to toss his goggles because of the broken nose. He was bleeding all up inside of his goggles, so he tossed his goggles. He went a few laps without goggles, then decided he needed to come to the goggle lane to get goggles. So he hit the goggle lane, got a fresh pair of goggles, and continued on his way, and he would finish 15th in the second moto. Valiant effort with a broken nose to salvage some points, and he remained fairly close to Geyser in the championship now, but he has to go into this Wednesday Grand Prix needing to rebound very strongly, and with a broken nose, obviously that's an injury that they can ride through, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful, and the pain intensity will go up as the adrenaline and the heart rate starts going up as well. So he's going to have to deal with that now, and now he doesn't have the points lead as well to kind of cushion himself on a little bit as Geyser is taking it. So that's something to keep an eye on for this Wednesday's MXGP of Città di Mantova, I believe it's called, is Città di Mantua, because they have all these different city names and region names coming up for these Grand Prix because they're all in Italy, so it can't all be the Italian Grand Prix. They've got to have a bunch of different names for it. Anyway, so that's the championship scenario. But the MXGP class had a bit of drama for the win, as Jorge Prado was initially credited with the overall Grand Prix win, as he was 2nd in the first moto and 2nd in the second moto, and that is plenty good enough for him to win the overall Grand Prix after Moto 1 winner Jeremy Seawer had an up and down moto, was eventually able to claw his way up to 5th, I believe it was, that he got, that he actually finished in the moto, and that would have got him on the podium overall, which it did. No, he got up to 4th, I'm sorry. Got up to 4th, but was bumped up into 3rd because Jorge Prado and Roman Febvre jumped on yellow flags when Thomas Covington was down. So this is not the AMA. This is not you can do whatever you want on a yellow flag. You have to slow down in roll sections when the yellow flag is out, which they did not do. They jumped the tabletop that had just went over 2 corners before, and Covington was picking himself up. So Prado and Febvre both penalized 2 positions each. Prado goes from finishing 2nd down to 4th. Febvre goes from, I think he finished 5th or 6th down to 7th or 8th. And Prado gets stripped of the victory after all is said and done, which hands Jeremy Seawer his first career MXGP class overall victory. Not obviously the way he wants to win it, but still cool nonetheless that he was able to finally get it. And definitely had to work for it. He won the first moto, but the second moto was riddled with a couple crashes and some weird instances that had to force his way through the field. Like I said, he ended up finishing 4th, so it was a good effort to get where he did, but Prado's 2-2 was still going to be enough to win the overall before the penalizations happened. So congrats to Jeremy Seawer for winning the overall. And moved Coldenhoff up to 2nd overall. It kind of flipped everything around. Like I said, I think Geyser initially was 3rd overall, but then the Prado penalty moved him back, and Geyser now dropped back to 4th behind Coldenhoff, who moved up spots because of the penalty. So they all finished like within a few points of each other, but in the end it was Seawer, Coldenhoff, Prado, and Geyser inside of the top 4 for the overall of the Grand Prix. And now this championship fight is so interesting to talk about because you have the situation where now Seawer is a Grand Prix winner. Maybe there's a case to be argued for Seawer being the best rider on the track as well. That first moto was very, very well managed. A good start, got out front early, pulled a gap. Those are absolutely races that I think we can see Seawer doing a little bit more of. But Tim Geyser also had a very similar moto in the second moto. Got a good start, worked his way to the front, got a good lead, and held it on. So I think those two both have like a bit of a plus side for them. The difference is, unfortunately, the championship is a 16-point lead for Geyser over Seawer. He's like 9 points ahead of Cairoli now, but he's 16 ahead of Seawer, and it looks like those two may or may not be the 2 fastest riders in the series right now. So it may come down to the 2 of them. But you also have to throw a nod in there for Coldenhoff and Prado, who respectively I think are 26 and 30 points out. But Prado consistently getting good starts. Coldenhoff, we saw what he could do at the second half of last year, had some great overall wins and good finishes in the second half of the season, and it seems like he's heating up at the right time. And then, like I said, Prado weighs, maybe $125 soaking wet. He's tiny and gets great starts on that 450, so it's rare he's going to get a bad start, and if he continues to start up front and finish up front, he's obviously going to claw his way back into this championship picture on some level. Now we're pretty much at the halfway point of what is the remaining MXGP schedule. So it's crunch time. Like, there's 5 guys that really still have a good shot at winning this world championship this year. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch because I don't think it's as cut and dry as Cairoli's going to consistent his way to it, or Geyser's going to start winning motos and it's going to be, that's the way it's going to go. I think all these guys have a different case that they can build for why they're going to be a world champion at the end of the year. And if you're not already watching MXGP, I would highly recommend it because seriously, the races are really good. The championship fight aside, the second moto was fan-freaking-tastic. 5 guys within a second of each other, or within a couple seconds of each other. They're basically nose to tail for 6-7 laps at the beginning of the moto as Prado led and kind of held up the Febvre, Geyser, Coldenhoff, and there's one other person mixed in there, Vlanderen train that was just all accordion together. And yeah, really, really great racing. I don't really love this racetrack, but it's interesting that it seems like it was slow enough and kind of sketchy enough that it seemed to close the field down a little bit, and I'm wondering if that's the case that we're going to see on Wednesday as well. So that is your MXGP class update. Let's move over to the MX2, where, again, the championship battle is a good one, but not as good as the MXGP class at all. And the reason why the MX2 class is so good with the championship battle, though, is because there's two guys going for this world title in Jago Geerts and Tom Vial, who are, I mean, still just kind of fresh-faced kids and really just trying to more or less get their feet wet in the class. And now they're both going for a world championship. You know, this is Vial's second full season, but it's Geerts' third, I believe. And both of them, I think, are just full of these rookie mistakes. Like we saw Jago Geerts in the second moto have a huge opportunity to pounce and make some good points on Vial, who was on the struggle bus in the second moto. And Geerts crashes twice and finishes 8th, so he still gained points, but like he could have finished 4th. They could have got on the podium or something like that. And Vial, who I don't even think he crashed in the moto, he just basically struggled his way back to 14th, and this is kind of another theme that's starting to happen with Vial, where when he starts up front, he wins a moto, and when he starts in 5th or 7th or whatever, he goes backwards, which is super strange. But again, just kind of the nature of the beast. These guys are not championship savvy veterans at this point in their careers. They're still young. They're still making a lot of mistakes. I guess the only problem is there's not anybody else that can capitalize on it. There's guys that are winning races, but the championship lead that those two have built at this point, I think they're like 70 points ahead of Maxime Renault, sitting in 3rd, and that's not Vial 70 points ahead. I'm talking about Geerts, who is 30 points behind Vial, is like 70 points ahead of Renault. So they've got it made pretty well that it's going to be down to just the two of them, and I think at this point it's starting to become a matter of who makes the least amount of mistakes. Vial, when he gets out front, seems to win the races, but when he doesn't start out front, mistakes start coming aplenty. Geerts never really seems to get great starts. Sometimes he does, but pretty rare. And most of the time he has to battle his way forward. And lately it seems like he's almost riding over his head a little bit, which is starting to really hurt his case a little bit for this championship. So Vial sitting in the driver's seat a little bit, but neither one of them won the Grand Prix. That instead goes to Thomas Kier Olsen, who at the beginning of the season was probably at least pretty close to Vial for odds-on favorite to win the championship. And at this point, after coming into the season injured the way he has and really taken a little bit too long to get himself built up to any level of competitiveness, probably out of the championship. But I don't think that matters too much to him because he signed a 2-year deal to go to the MXGP class aboard the Rockstar Energy Husqvarna team that he's already on, and follows it up with the Grand Prix win in the very next race. I think he's plenty happy with his situation, whether he wins the world title or not. He won the overall, though, by not winning a single moto. He went 2-4, while his younger Australian teammate, Jed Beaton, won the second moto, which was his first career moto victory. And like I said, Vial won the first moto, but then struggled very hard in the second moto to finish 14th. So consistency is key. Thomas Kier Olsen has always been a very consistent rider in the MX2 class, and now he has another trophy on his mantle to show for it. A 2-4 day, wins him the overall. Beaten his teammate, who was 8th in the first moto, I believe. Ends up finishing, what was he, 7th or 8th in the first moto. Ends up with the win in the second moto, which he did a fabulous job to withstand pressure the entire race, it seemed, from Ben Watson, who ends up 3rd on the podium. But Beaton ends up 2nd overall, so it's a Rockstar Energy Husqvarna 1-2, which would be plenty of elation for them, but unfortunately their fellow teammate Arminas Jasikonis, as we already talked about, is dealing with pretty hefty injuries. So plenty to smile about in the MX2 camp, but I don't think that they're smiling after everything that happened in the MXGP races. But yeah, so good on Olsen, good on Beaton, and good on Watson, who got 2 good starts, ran up front most of the day, was 6th in the first moto, and ends up 2nd in the second moto to get 3rd overall. And yeah, so now we've had 3 different Yamaha riders really kind of find their strides in different parts of the season. Obviously, Geerts fighting for the world title as a Yamaha rider is one. And then Maxime Renault looked great in Faenza and looked pretty good again this week as well. Like it wasn't a bad round whatsoever here at Mantova for Renault. Ends up going 4-7, I think it was, for 4th overall. Again, these overalls just kind of split up all over the place for everybody, and Renault mixed in there. Actually, now that I think about it, I think he went 3-6. So he was 2 spots better than I gave him credit for. Rowan van de Moosdijk runs out the top 5, and Vial with his horrendous second moto ends up getting 6th overall. Geertz ended up 9th overall because his first moto was also pretty rough, having to come through the field, and ending up in 11th. And then obviously in the second moto gets 8th. So not very good for Geertz. Really good opportunity there for him to gain points on Vial in that second moto and just completely bottled it up. And now I don't know where to think about this championship hunt, because in one sense, I think Geertz is maybe the faster rider. I think that you put Geertz and Vial on the same stretch of racetrack, I think Jago Geertz is going to be better. The problem is, most of the time they don't end up on the same stretch of racetrack. It was actually a rare circumstance this weekend that they were battling. Unfortunately, they were kind of battling for like 11th at the time. But yeah, I think Vial just gets good starts all the time on his Red Bull KTM, because that's the standard. At the very least, he's going to be inside of the top 10. And Geertz seems like it's hit or miss. Sometimes he gets a good start and ends up inside of the top 5. Sometimes he ends up outside the top 15. And that may be the biggest determining factor in this MX2 championship down the stretch, is whether or not Vial can consistently get the good starts that he's known for, or can Geertz step up to the plate and start getting better starts than he has been getting. I think that's going to be the, like I said, hit or miss point in the MX2 championship fight. But anyway, we are heading into yet another Grand Prix this Wednesday. They're coming at you hot and heavy, and like I said, I'm trying to get more of these GP reviews out to you guys so that you can get caught up on the GPs if you haven't been watching or paying attention. I would highly recommend it. I hear a lot of people, or the comments come in quite often of you guys asking where you can watch it. Quite honestly, the only really good place to watch it is mxgp-tv.com, which is a pay-for subscription that you have to get, obviously. But CBS Sports in the USA also does air the Grand Prix from time to time. But honestly, what you could also do is just keep up on the highlights from MXGP. MXGP TV, or I think it's just MXGP on YouTube, has the highlights come out every week with some other cool, little tidbits here, either the crashes or the passes or battles or other things that are going on. So check them out and get kind of caught up a little bit on the series, because this one is going to be very interesting to keep an eye on down the stretch, and I'm going to try to do everything I can to bring you guys updates throughout the years. So congrats to Olsen, and congrats to Sewer for winning the MXGP of Lombardia. But again, my thoughts remain with Arminas Jasikonis, as should all of yours, during this very difficult time for the Lithuanian rider. And hope all is going to be well for the number 27 machine. But everybody, thanks so much for watching another video here on Start Your Systems. Appreciate it as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.